Zenless Zone Zero is finally coming to full release on July 4th of this year, because there's no better way to celebrate America, yeah! Anyway, I had a chance to play over 150 hours in the latest beta for Zenless, and I love this game. In today's video, I'm going to take a deep dive into every aspect of Zenless Zone Zero, so that you are all 100% ready to play right on launch. Everything from the combat, the story, the gacha systems, the gameplay, and more are going to be covered. Grab some delicious Hawaiian pizza, and if you're like me, some cough drops. Let's do this. To understand the concepts of Zenless Zone Zero, let's take a brief crash course of the background lore, with no spoilers of course. Welcome to New Eridu, a post-apocalyptic metropolitan city. You enter this world as a proxy, which is basically a professional guide for others so that they can traverse a supernatural disaster called the Hollows. These Hollows are a terrible phenomenon which house horrific creatures known as ethereals. Luckily, New Eridu is thriving by extracting resources out of the Hollows. As the legendary proxy, you will either choose Wise, or of course the best MC to ever exist in a gacha game, Belle. And I will personally do everything in my power to protect her. The overall story of the game will explore their daily lives as well as the adventures of the cast of characters. Having played up to the first interlude of the story, I can say that I really enjoy the concepts and everything discussed so far in the lore. Additionally, as you continue along the legendary proxy life, more and more content is going to be unlocked for your game. Progressing the story will also introduce you to the wide variety of characters, which is one of the best parts of Zenless. The other cool thing is if they're part of the story, you'll get a chance to use them as a trial character before pulling them in the gacha, which we'll discuss later in the video. Now that we understand some basic terms, let's start getting to the good stuff. There are two primary core forms of gameplay in Zenless Zone Zero. You'll have your hollow gameplay as the proxy, and the combat as your agents. We'll go into good detail on both, but this is going to be your core loop of the game, and I personally really enjoyed it for the most part. The first major gameplay form is hollow movement as the proxy. Using the power of the hollow deep dive system, you'll sync up your mind with this cute little bang boo so that you can be in the hollow with your agents, navigating them through the treacherous perils. The HDD takes place on this TV-like stage, where you will traverse puzzles, mysteries, and a bunch of other obstacles to progress whatever goal you have. There is a lot to remember for these hollows, lots of different enemies, lots of different tools, so it's better described as you come across them for yourself. It's overall really simple, but there's just a good chunk of info that could get pretty dry. Embedded in this hollow movement system is the much more exciting combat, which was really my primary source of enjoyment for the game. In fact, the fluid, beautiful combat as agents was one of the most amazing parts of Zenless Zone Zero. The game features a team of 3 units, and we'll discuss the team synergies aspects a little bit later. The combat features a total of 5 different elements: fire, electric, ice, physical, and ether. While most characters will feature on one primary type across all of their moves, there are certain characters that can have different attributes depending on what move you use. For example, let's look at one of my favorites, Ben Bigger. While most of his attacks are of the fire attribute, some of them are still physical. In the grand scheme of things, this isn't necessarily a big thing to worry about, it's just something to keep in mind. Breaking down the actual fighting portion, here is every kind of move a unit can make. All units, of course, will have their basic attack, which is, basic, but in some cases, these can actually be held down for more power or damage. The special attack is basically the skill that the characters have. This is going to differ from unit to unit and can determine how the character will play in particular. Sticking with our good old Ben Bigger, his skill is actually a direct parry to enemies that does insanely good damage. Note that some special attacks can also be held down for more power or damage, just like our basic attacks. As you do more damage, dodge, counterattack, etc., your special attack can become an EX special attack, and this will just give it extra abilities, power, knockback, or damage. Every unit has a sidestep called a dodge, which will be indicated by this slight slowdown effect. The cool thing about this dodge is that there's a lot of different moves and abilities that can stem out from it. Performing an attack right after a dodge will trigger a dash attack. You can imagine how fun this move is to use when Billy Kid is just dodging everywhere, spamming a bunch of bullets. The dash attack is a great way to stay mobile, either closing the gap or slowly retreating from an enemy as well. Performing an attack with a very well performed dodge can trigger a dodge dodge counter. Simply put, once you dodge the enemy's attack, press the attack button and you'll get this super cool dodge counter. When you stagger an enemy, a meter will appear at the bottom of the screen featuring two faces, either a character or a bangbu. Choosing one of these characters will trigger what's known as a combo attack. The character you choose from this timed meter will perform a skill and enter as your new controlled unit. Most of the time you can string these combo attacks in a long chain through your entire team and your bangbu. Also, one more tiny note is if you only have 2 units in your team, there's only going to be the one option for that other character in the meter. If your character is staggered, you'll get a little alert pop up indicating you can perform an assist attack. Think of this kind of like a tag function where the unit you select will switch out and become your active character. Here's where things get really cool. Once your decibel rating hits 3000, it'll be maxed and you can press Q to use a character's ultimate. These ults are such a beautiful cinematic animation and will for the most part be their most incredible attack. Something else we're going to discuss a little bit later with team synergies is the core skills of characters, which can state something along the lines of your damage being increased if 2 electric units are in the same team or something like that. However, for individual characters, there's certain rotations and mechanics that you'll need to pay attention to. For example, Ben Bigger's primary damage will completely revolve around that crazy parry. Similar to Sokaku's kit, where using some of her abilities will buff some of her other aspects of what she can do. Generally speaking, you'll get a hang of this just by playing the characters and testing them out, so don't worry if that didn't make too much sense. I tried to explain it the best I could. If you have more questions, let me know in the comments and I'll try to answer them. Basically, just make sure you read the kits and skills for each characters to see how they generally play, and you'll be totally fine. But let's move on, because the Zenless Zone Zero combat goes even deeper. As you attack more and more with moves of the same attribute, you can trigger what's called an attribute anomaly. In other words, this will cause different procs and effects depending on what type of move you use. If you accumulate a lot of electric damage, you'll cause shock, which you can think of as a DOT that causes intermittent damage and can interrupt enemy actions. And if you're fighting a robot, they will be completely immobilized. Accumulating fire attribute anomaly will cause burn. This will also act as a DOT, just more continuously. In addition, organic enemies will be immobilized if they're burnt. Corruption is the name of Ether's attribute anomaly. Like the others, it'll trigger damage, but there's something extra. Corrupted ethereal enemies will enter a havoc state of sorts, attacking both friend and foe in a blind rage. Ice and physical are a bit different from the other anomalies, as they both have 2. Freeze will do exactly what you think, literally freeze the enemy in place for a certain time period, completely immobilizing them. Frostbite, on the other hand, will reduce the ice resistance for that enemy. Physical damage also gets the 2. Assault will deal massive damage to the enemy and will interrupt them. This was probably my favorite one to trigger, as I really liked using Billy Kid. Armor Break decreases the enemy's resistance to physical damage. There is also a stat to actually increase the damage dealt by these attribute anomalies. Every character has an attribute mastery stat if you scroll down in their page. Similarly, they also have anomaly rate bonus stat, which is just how fast the attribute anomaly builds up. And that's really what you'll need to know for the combat. Now let's get into another amazing part of Zenless Zone Zero, which is the characters. If you're new to the Hoyoverse games, let me tell you, their characters are fantastic. They make it really hard to skip any of them. In Zenless, these characters are broken into different factions that the game's story will focus on in some capacity. For example, you've got the cunning hairs like Nicole and Anby Damara, or my personal favorite character, Billy Kid. You know that cool glitchy sidestep effect that gun characters do when they fire a bunch of bullets? Yeah, that is super sick. Anyway, the character polish in this way is also extremely well crafted. The voice acting and direction is very strong and plays very well into their actual kits and designs. And in my story playthrough, I was actually very surprised how much of the story is actually voice acted. Similarly, we already know that Hoyoverse has been killing it on animations recently, and Zenless is no different. But let's go ahead and use this character section to talk about the team synergies that you can see inside the game. Specifically, in team selection screens, you can see this little smiley face. And for the longest time, I had no idea this was anything of value until I dug a little bit deeper. This is actually a nice little hidden mechanic that not many users are going to get right away. Basically, this mechanic just states that certain characters are going to innately perform better with certain other characters. Let's stick with our example of those cunning hairs. Nicole, Anby, and Billy Kid all share a team synergy bond in this way, where their stats and abilities will be automatically enhanced when they're in the same team with each other. So make sure that smiley face is very happy and he's not a little sad frowny face. Anyway, there's also a second hint in one of these team synergy things based on the attribute of certain characters as well. I alluded to this earlier in the video, but we can use Anby Damara as an example. Listed in her core skills section, we can also see that she'll function very good with other electric characters. This is why I mentioned it was so important to read your unit's abilities and to build your team accordingly. But it is really exciting to see so much team synergy aspects in the game, so we can have a great time building different team compositions to what we like. Before we move on to the gacha system of Zenless Zone Zero, I want to give a quick shout out to the beautiful OST. As someone who absolutely cannot get enough of the Honkai Star Rail OST, Zenless is just as magnificent. It has a great blend of those enjoyable, laid-back, casual tracks, but also those in-your-face, high-energy action songs. The game is seamless with these transitions, and the soundtrack fits very well in what you can imagine the world to sound like. But I suppose we should probably discuss one of the most important parts of a gacha game, the gacha system. This will of course be the primary way to get your characters, especially those very strong limited ones. For the actual gacha, there are 3 different kinds of banners. You can pull for characters, weapons, or as in this game they are called W engines, and the bang boos. Think of these cute little guys as Astral Ops from Honkai Impact 3rd, where you can upgrade them and they'll help you in battle through buffs, attacks, abilities, etc. There will be both the limited and permanent forms of these banners, and they'll feature different currencies. Be prepared for a terrible joke here, because the main credits of the game have an amazing name. These are simply called Denny's. Yeah, I kinda love that name. Your premium currency, kinda like Stellar Jades or Primogems or Asterites, whatever you want to call it, are polychromes. Your polychromes can either be remade as master tapes for the permanent banners or encrypted master tapes for the limited banners. The cute little Bang Boos banner will be pulled through using Boo Pons. A fun little bit of trivia for you all is that these used to be called Q Pens in the last closed beta. Weapons, which are called W engines in Zenless, are also pulled through those encrypted master tapes. When you're first starting the game, you'll be able to get a 5-star very early through the novice banner. This will feature a smaller subset of the standard 5 stars you can get from the permanent form of the character banner. Naturally, just like Honkai Star Rail, once you hit 300 pulls, you'll get to choose your own standard 5-star. In this last closed beta test, the limited characters were Ellen, who's a very cool Ice Shark girl, and Zhu Yuan, a very cool Ether DPS unit. As you pull more units, you'll also get an extra currency that you can switch for different rewards, similar to those of the coral things you get in Wuthering Waves or the Starlight Exchange in Star Rail. Additionally, there is in fact a pity system in Zenless. This just simply states that you will get a 5-star S-rank character every 90 pulls and an A rank every 10 pulls. W engines will also have a pity, but this is at 80 instead. It's been reported that there's a soft pity starting at around 75 signal searches. I'm not 100% of the accuracy on that, but seeing as this is a Hoyo game, it's very possible. Your 50-50 chance also will return for characters in your limited banner. If you fail the 50-50 when you roll a 5-star, as in you get a standard 5-star instead of the event one, you are guaranteed to get the event character the next time you roll a 5-star. This is also going to transfer over to the next event banner if you don't get back to another 5-star. Something cool they added in Zenless Zone Zero is that you no longer have to guess how much pity you're at either. It shows it automatically. So for all of this gacha stuff, if you have any questions, let me know below and I'll answer them. I know it can be a little convoluted at times. But one question that might be on your mind right now is how free-to-play friendly is Zenless Zone Zero? The short answer is if you save responsibly and do your content, yes, it's very free to play friendly. In my experience in the closed beta test, I was receiving more than enough of the Boo Pens to get chances at the 5-star Bang Boo, and the same can be said about polychromes in general. The game gives you enough of these gems through doing the story, events, giveaways, logins, all of that sort of stuff. For example, because we had over 40 million pre-registers, we're getting another free unit! Oh, and by the way, through the events and things, the game gives you a ton of these free 4-stars. including the best damage character in the entire game. For now though, you'll just have to tune into my later tier list videos to know who that is, but feel free to guess in the comments. Anyway, the primary source of gems once you complete the story will be through the end game content, and we'll dive into that a little bit towards the end of the video. With the actual strength of the characters and the team synergy aspects, it's safe to say that the game is actually free to play friendly though. As for the actual events, it'll follow a pretty similar idea to Honkai Star Rail. Per patch, we're gonna get these big events that'll grant us a good chunk of polychromes, and as an example, we had a holo movement gameplay centered event, an arcade gaming side event, as well as a combat event, all with good rewards just in the closed beta. Just like how we stated earlier, as you progress the story, you'll unlock more of the overworld city you live in as well. This also holds true to a couple of the mechanics I want to mention, the so-called confidant system and the time management system. Have you ever thought to yourself, man, I wish my gacha games shared some similarities to the best game of all time, Persona 5 Royal? Well, then you're in luck. Zenless Zone Zero has a trust system, which is very akin to how the confidant system works at a basic level. You can learn and earn more lore for the individual characters as you level up their trust. Certain dialogue options, activities, and things of that nature will boost it as well. In other terms, as you do more activities with, let's say, Billy Kid, you'll be able to unlock his character stories. This ties into the concept of the time management system of the game, which is also similar to Persona. As you do any activity in the city, like getting coffee from this lovely Tin Man, doing quests, or even playing video games in the arcade with the one and only Billy Kid, you will progress the time into the next segment of the day. There are 4 segments of the day, and certain activities or missions will only be available during certain times. Don't worry though, because as far as I got, I was still able to easily 100% the game so far, so it seems pretty lax in this regard for those activities. Now let's discuss the end game and what your loops are going to look like in Zenless Zone Zero. Every day you'll get your energy similar to any other gacha game, and you'll use this to awaken your characters, gather level up materials, disk drives. Oh wait, we haven't talked about those. I mean, technically they are part of the end game because you'll never be satisfied with what you get. In simple terms, disk drives are the relics of the game and feature the same concepts as the other gacha games. Zenless Zone Zero features a total of 6 relic slots named 1 through 6 in Roman numerals. These will give you a variety of stats to boost your units to their max potential. In fact, this will be the main bulk of how you obtain your stats. Each disk drive will have 1 main stat and a total of up to 4 substats depending on their rarity. As you unlock and equip disk drives of the same set, you will get set bonuses. Here's where you're gonna want that pen and paper because this is the secret hidden OP info that you can only get in this channel. I mean, have you seriously not hit that subscribe button yet? It's so easy. But here's something I totally didn't even realize until closer to the end of the last beta test. Slots 1 through 3 are fixed main stats on your disk drives as such. Slot 1 will always be flat HP as your main stat, slot 2 will always be flat attack, and slot 3 will always be flat defense. The remaining 3 slots will all have different main stats that you can get as follows. Slot 4 will either be HP %, attack %, defense %, or either crit rate or crit damage. Slot 5 can either be that same HP, attack, or defense %, pen ratio, which is penetration ratio, or attribute mastery, which we discussed earlier. Lastly, slot 6 can be those same 3 HP, attack, and defense, anomaly rate %, or impact %. Whew! Sorry about all that, I know it's kind of a lot, but trust me, it's worth it to know this so you have a much easier time with the relic system. Set effects utility will depend on what character you need it on, and will determine that character's best in slot. I'll link a website describing these in more detail so I don't bore you here, just know that there is both A rank and S level of these disk drives. Now for the endgame modes. Similar to the simulated universe or elusive realms for you Wuthering Waves players, there is in fact a roguelike adventure mode in Zenless. This is called the Hollow Zero, and it's actually unlocked fairly early in your gameplay. You will collect your power-ups, cards, equipment, etc. to progress through your run. These will feature both your hollow movement and your combat gameplay. In addition, it's also going to introduce a bunch of new, interesting mechanics like pressure. For the sake of this video, I won't dive in too much into those mechanics, and I think it's better that you learn them as you go anyway. However, Hollow Zero and the Shiyu defense are an insanely good source of polychrome. background. Shiyu's defense is this game's Abyss, Memory of Chaos, Tower of Adversity, you get the picture. Assemble your teams and fight through waves of enemies in a certain amount of time in order to achieve better and better rewards. If you have played gacha games before, there isn't much nuance to this, as you've definitely seen it. Each round of this time attack mode will feature a certain buff or attribute addition that will increase your stats, and you'll definitely need to pay attention to these and build multiple strong units in order to accomplish the task. Although we all know what the true endgame of any gacha game is. Yep, that's right, pulling for every single new, hot, handsome husbando or waifu that pops up every single patch. Or mindlessly grinding more relics, and more relics, and more relics. Yeah, you get the picture. Alright, let's recap what we've discussed for Zenless Zone Zero, so you're all very prepared to enjoy the game as much as I have. The two gameplay modes are both enjoyable, your TV proxy gameplay as well as your amazing combat. The characters of the game are simply phenomenal, as well as the overall polish we discussed earlier. Every unit has a lot of different options in combat, and this is greatly going to increase your synergies and team strategies. The story is well thought out and entertaining, and it's aided by the city and events that the game offers. We have even got a good chunk of compensation and freebies so far, and I expect to be even more. The gacha system has also seemingly been pretty fair so far, giving us a lot of tapes and currency for a sufficient amount of pulls. We also talked about the endgame in Hollow Zero and Shiyu defense, as well as grinding for those relic sets, but it should still be pretty entertaining and a very solid loop. All in all, I hope this guide helps you prepare for the amazing adventure that is Zenless Zone Zero. I was totally not expecting to like this game as much as I currently do. Once the CBT ended, I found myself wanting to play it more and more and more. Luckily, we don't have very long to wait, and we can all enjoy this journey together. But let me know what you think of Zenless Zone Zero and if this guide helped in the comments. I really want to hear from all of you and discuss this game further. Make sure to like the video as it helps out, and it's guaranteed to help your gacha luck by at least 0.001%. Subscribe and follow for more Zenless Zone Zero and gacha gaming content, and I very much look forward to the next video with you all. And that's it. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.